Will he participate in team drills today?
He's limited, so we'll see. Both those guys will be competing. They got 3 days to do it. Depends how we use them, what packages, but probably have a better answer for you on Sunday.
In what ways can Christian McCaffrey kind of diversify what Carolina does offensively? I know you've seen them for a number of years now.
We can do everything, so it's just how do you treat him. You know, he's a good running back. He can run outside, he can run inside. He's good at screens. He's good at routes out of the backfield. If you motion him out wide and use him as a wide receiver, he's developed in those routes too. So it causes a lot of issue in some man-to-man situations, and you just don't know what you're going to get. When a guy can be everywhere and he's versatile, it limits what a defense can do. Some of the situations that he can put you in.
Is that an element that they've maybe been missing, in your opinion, for the last few years?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't think they've ever had one quite like that. You know, it's a good element for anyone to have. They're hard to come by. You know, you won't win every year in any offense that you're in, but anytime you have a real good running back who can also be a threat in the pass game, that gives you a lot of options.
Christian was saying that your families are close to the Shanahans and McCaffreys. He said that he thought maybe you babysat him a few times when he was a kid. Do you remember that?
If I did, I probably left my sister to do it very quickly and moved on. But no, I mean, his dad was my hero growing up, and I was close to that and his wife, Lisa, and that's really why I wore 87 in college. Ed was the man, and I knew all his sons. They were a lot younger when I knew them, but they've all turned out to be pretty good athletes and real good people.
You faced Carolina's defense 4 times the past 2 seasons. Do you feel you have a good sense of what they like to do in terms of coverages and blitzes?
Yes, you know, and I think I played them. You know, I played them 3 years ago in Cleveland. I think I played them the year before that in Washington. So I feel like I played them about every year for a while. 4 times in the last 2 years at Atlanta. They're a challenge. I mean, they've been a good defense for a long time. They got a lot of really good players, and they got a really sound, good scheme. It's extremely aggressive, but it's also they can limit explosives too. They're sound in their coverages, and they are very tough against the run. So, not to mention they've led the league in sacks. I know they did last year. I'm sure they were up there the year before because they've been good at that for a long time.
What do they do to limit explosives?
They're just sound in their coverage. They don't put too much pressure on the corners. And when you have very smart linebackers who are good in zone, tied with a pass rush, and guys who really tee off on the quarterback, you can't wait very long to expose them. And if you do wait and hold on to that ball, it's probably going to be a turnover or a sack. So it's tough for big plays to show up fast.
Do you expect a pretty similar scheme with the changing coordinators, or?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they've been successful. I know he's been there for a while. You know, everyone has their own tweaks, and you'll see what happens in week 1, and people will probably start studying that to see what the differences are. But usually with the success they have and how good and sound of a scheme that's been, I don't expect there to be too much differences, but I know there'll be some wrinkles.
What have you been able to do with Laken Tomlinson since he's been here, and can you tell, without getting on the field yet, how he's picking up the scheme?
Well, I mean, he's a very intelligent guy. He's very smart. You know, we got him in here over the weekend, so we were able to meet with him. I think we did on Sunday, and then he got to practice a little bit on Monday. It was good to get him out there just going. We didn't do much on Monday. Today there'll be a lot more for him, but he's obviously behind. He hasn't played in a system like this in college or the NFL, but he's got the tools to be successful, and we're excited to get to work with him. I know he's got a lot of work ahead of him. I don't want to overwhelm him too much. But we're going to be challenging him every day.
You put him in one spot and just said, let's learn this? And
the guard spots, but he's got to do both. Just you don't have enough guys to get through practices between the scout team looks and the offensive line, so it's just really not an option just to stay at one spot.
George Kittle your starting tight end, or do you plan on using a rotation based on down and distance?
Yeah, that'll be on situations, down and distance, how healthy he is. You know, he's another guy who'll be limited today, so we got 3 guys on our roster, so we'll see how that plays out throughout the week, and we won't really know that till Sunday.
Is that an aggravation of the hamstring?
Yes.
Going back to Tomlinson, any chance that he's in the mix to start, or?
Yeah, there's definitely a chance. You know, I've seen it done before, but it's definitely a hard thing to do. You know, there's really 3 real practices to get that done, and that Friday practice, you know, it's 1 practice in pads too. So he doesn't have any familiarity with the scheme, so it's going to be a challenge for him. I don't want to put unrealistic expectations on him, but I know he's going for it. I know we're working with him that way to get him ready, and Hopefully he is by Sunday. If not, hopefully he is by the next Sunday. And if not, we'll be trying every single week.
Solomon Thomas, kind of like it looked like he was starting on nickel. Is he going to also start on base as well, or how do you see him?
It depends on what personnel they're in, how we think they're playing it, what the packages are. I'm not going to get into exactly who's starting, especially, like I said it with the safeties, I've said it with the tight ends. I'm pretty much going to say it with every position. Brian Hoyer starting. Thomas Gazette, Staley starting. That's about everyone else, so we'll find out on Sunday.
I know you're familiar with Christian McCaffrey, but it's hard to know how Carolina plans to use him. So how do you game plan for that in particular?
I think you have an idea. We all know what he's good at, and they're going to try to put him in situations where he can be man-to-man coverage. They're going to give him the ball as a running back, and everyone knows the type of options you can have with the zone read and packages of a Wildcat. So you don't know exactly. They can't do it all. There's only so many plays in a game, but you have to at least go through it all and be prepared for whatever. And as tape goes, I think people will get a better idea throughout the year. But especially in week one, you got to be sound in what you do, and you got to be ready for everything.
You guys are going up against a pretty big wide receiver in Kelvin, 6'5", 245. From an offensive standpoint, what does he provide that maybe separates himself from some of these other wide receivers around the league?
I think anytime, being big's an advantage if you can get open and if you have very good hands. And Kelvin does have that. He's been a solid receiver. I studied him hard coming out of Florida State. And when you have a big guy who has that size, who can also come off the ball and get in and out of breaks, he's going to get some separation. But when you're big like that, you don't need a ton of separation. He can, even sometimes when he's covered, as long as he's between the man and the ball, it's very hard to stop him when you have elite type of hands and you have that size where you don't feel people hanging on your forearms. Guarding him doesn't mean your job's done. It's hard to get the incompletion, and he also has the ability to separate too. So that's what makes him a threat to be a very good wideout in this league.
They drafted Christian and Curtis Samuel, and Ron even said in the con call just now that they're looking at ways to maybe take the load off Cam, and presumably that means taking less hits, maybe fewer running plays. Is that something you're anticipating, and do you still have to be aware of Cam as a runner?
Yes, definitely. That's what Cam does best, and that's what makes him very tough to defend. So, I hear all that too, but it really doesn't matter until you see what happens. They do have more weapons. There's definitely different ways they can use all those guys, especially when you have guys like the two you mentioned. Are they running backs? Are they receivers? Well, depends on what the play is. So you got to be able to account for all of that, and then you have a quarterback who can play like a running back and a quarterback. So it definitely gives them lots of versatility as just the type of scheme that they can be in. That's why you got to be ready for everything, but you also got to know you're not going to be. There's too many options they can do with those type of players, so you better make sure you're sound in what you do.
In that same vein, you have the benefit of being with entirely new personnel. Week one, there's no regular season tape. Is that to your advantage at this point? Do you are there things? Obviously, you talked about not showing everything in the preseason, but do you view that as a significant advantage heading into this game?
Yeah, I think always, I think it's always hard for everybody. Earlier in the year, you want to study a bunch of tape, but you study last year's and you don't know what's changed. You study preseason, you don't know what they're setting you up for, or there's guys that aren't on the team anymore. So it's regardless of being on a new team or an old team, that's stuff that's tough for guys every single year, because even if they've done the scheme forever, there's always going to be new wrinkles, and usually stuff that they really like, they don't show much in preseason. So you go into that every year thinking like that, but yeah, I do think it helps you when you are on a new staff and they're not quite sure, but I have been office coordinator for a while, so there's definitely lots of tape that they can look at, so it's not like that they have no idea.
So more preseason with Brian, how does he grow as a quarterback?
I think he's been through more. He's more battle tested. His ability is the same. I think Brian's in a good place. He's had his ups and downs. I think he's got to the point to where he realizes he can't control everything. He just works as hard as he can and doesn't get too high or too low. I think he believes in himself, and I think it's real, because he's developed that confidence through adversity, through overcoming it, and I just see a more confident guy who's up for anything.
Is he a captain, Kyle? Did you guys vote on that? Or
no, we didn't vote on captains. I don't plan on doing that till later in the year. I'm going to just decide on each captains each week. And later in the year, I plan on having some set ones that finish the year for us.
With Last one. And Davis, is that the best inside linebacker duo you figured to face this year?
It's hard to imagine it being much better, you know, especially with Shaq there also. I mean, they make it go. I mean, those three and K1 and Short inside, you know, it's as talented as it gets, and it's not just talent. It's they're very smart. They play in a scheme. They've done it for a while. They know what you do. They tee off on plays. They can recognize plays very fast. They haven't done a ton over the years, which makes them so sound and makes them extremely fast. And they get turnovers, and they're tough to move the ball on. So it starts with those linebackers and the people up front, and that's why they've always had a lot of success.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Thanks.